Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Pastor John DuBois, pastor of the Palmacia Presbyterian, who's been the pastor of the Moré family for many years.
It's a joy for me to be here today, to be coming to this place where we have all been coming for 100 years to get the bread. And when they asked me to give the blessing, I thought of all of the different stories in the Bible about bread. There are so many. There's a story of where Moses gives bread to the children of Israel when they're in the wilderness, the manna that they have. The story of the bird that brings Elijah bread when he is hungry and alone to take care of him. Or how Jesus took the bread and broke it and took from a loaf of bread the opportunity to feed all of those thousands who were gathered there on the hillside. And that made me think of how this family, the Moré family, has taken bread from one family and fed so many people across time and space. And I see the miracle that's happened here again. But I also thought of the prayer that Jesus taught the people, the Lord's Prayer, and how Rabbi Bernholtz told me that it's a prayer that Christians and Jews and everyone can pray together. And how in that prayer, Jesus says the line, "Give us this day our daily bread." And notice that it's the plural. We pray, "Give us," together, because there's something in bread that brings us together. And when we make that prayer, "Give us this day our daily bread," we're praying not only for those who have bread, but for those who are hungry, for the sustenance of our own bodies, and for the sustenance and welfare of the others around us. So as a way of noting 100 years of bringing forth the bread, I invite you to share with me in that prayer, the Lord's Prayer, that has meant so much to so many for so long. Now, because I'm a Presbyterian pastor, I'll pray, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors," but you'll hear trespasses and sins, and we'll come out at the same place at the end. Let us pray together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And congratulations.
It's my pleasure now to introduce a descendant of Juan Moré, and I didn't realize, I'd forgotten the story, but he's been a city councilman, been a leader in our community. That's Mr. Rudy Fernandez, please.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here today. I was asked to talk about the history of La Segunda Central Bakery and everything it's been through. And actually, the history does not go back 100 years. It goes back 146 years. And if you look back 146 years ago, there's a city in northern Spain called Doria, Spain. It's actually a little village, and back in 1868, December 20th, when Juan Moré was born, there were about as many people in Doria then as there are today, which is probably fewer than the number of people here. It's a very small village in the Catalan region. Juan Moré was born in 1868, and the next day he was baptized in the main church in Doria, Spain. Throughout his next 18 years, Juan probably spoke not a word of Spanish, because in Doria, they only speak Catalan. That's their local language. And Juan probably never traveled more than 10 miles from Doria, Spain. In 1887, at the age of 19, he applied for the mandatory Spanish military, but he wasn't accepted into the military. His draft card didn't get called, so Juan went to Madrid, and in Madrid, he learned how to speak Spanish. A few years later, in 1891, as an adventurer, at the age of 23, he left Catalonia, headed for Cuba. Nobody knows quite why he went to Cuba, but he lived in Cuba, he loved the land, and it was in Cuba where he learned to farm, he enjoyed farming, and he learned to bake bread. He became a baker in Cuba. A few years later, war broke out between Spain and Cuba, and he told war stories to his kids, and his kids assumed that Juan Moré fought on the Spanish side of the war. And there's really no evidence that shows one way or the other what side of the war Juan fought on, but he talked to my grandfather a lot that Juan used to sympathize with the Cuban revolutionaries who were ultimately supported by the U.S. government. But in any event, the only thing we know is that he was active in the war. He told my grandmother that one day he was fighting next to a guy who was a friend of his who was about to die. And all we know is that Juan reached down this man's throat and saved his life. So we don't know what happened there, but Juan was not only in the war, but he was a war hero. In 1899, he left Cuba after the war, and the fact that he may have been on the Cuban side would explain why he didn't go back to Spain, where the Catalanes didn't like the Spaniards. There's a lot of politics there. On January 11th, 1899, Juan landed a few miles of here on this port of Tampa aboard the USS Mascot. The USS Mascot is the boat that is on the city seal of the city of Tampa that's in Bob Buckhorn's office, and we see that around. So every time you see the USS Mascot, you could think of Copeland's great-grandfather, Juan Moré, who was on that boat, and that's how he got here from Cuba. When he arrived, and by the way, his name was spelled 3 different ways, looking at his birth certificate, his military certificate, his baptismal certificate. It was spelled 3 different ways, and for those first 30 years, Juan would have pronounced it Moré. Juan Moré was his name. And a Moré, the name means a mulberry tree. So that's where the name comes from. But when he arrived in Tampa in 1899, people mistook him for an Italian because he didn't speak Spanish like the Cubans and the Spaniards spoke. Of course, the Italians didn't know what he was because they knew he wasn't a Spanish. But from that point forward, he spells his name Moré and changes the pronunciation to the more Spanish pronunciation of Juan Moré. In fact, his full name was Juan José Tomás Francisco Moré Como, but we just call him Juan Moré. So he arrives in Tampa aboard the Mascot. People think he's an Italian. He's trying to learn the language, which is Spanish, not English. He sends for his sweetheart in Catalunya. His sweetheart was a girl named Maria. He writes Maria a letter. Maria shows up. Maria is so covered in chicken pox that Juan Moré doesn't recognize her. Maria says, "Look, Juan, if you don't want to marry me, I understand." Juan married Maria. They had a daughter named Margarita. The mother and the daughter both died. The 1900 census shows Juan Moré as an occupation as a baker. That's all the census says. He's a baker. He's living on 4th Street with his cousin. Shortly thereafter, he falls in love with Maria's caretaker, a lady named Enriqueta Teixidor. We can give her full name, but we'll just call her Enriqueta Teixidor. Enriqueta and Juan were married on June 23rd, 1903. Enriqueta was a widow with 2 children, Nena and Ricardo. In fact, Ricardo's granddaughter, Margie, is here with us today. Enriqueta and Juan were married. For the next 2 decades, the first 2 decades of the 19th century, of the 20th century, excuse me, he was listed on various documents throughout the city, and he was always listed as a baker. He was in ownership with other people, usually Spaniards, in different bakeries throughout Ybor City. During this 20-year period, he had 7 kids, he and Enriqueta, in addition to the 2 they already had. They had my grandmother, Marina, Lita and Chita were the next 2 girls, Cuco and Tony. Tony was Copeland's grandfather, Juanito, who died 2 months later, and Uncle John. Of those brothers and sisters, there weren't too many grandkids, but almost all of them who are alive today are here with us. The grandkids are my mom, Sylvia, Marina's daughter, Chita's daughter, Brenda, who's around here, right here. Lita didn't have any kids. Raymond had 2 kids. who are Raymond Jr. and Helen, and Tony, who had two kids, Tony Jr., and Mary Lynn, who recently died a very tragic death, one of our favorite cousins who isn't with us. And then Uncle Johnny's kids, John Eric, who is with us, and a couple of his brothers died recently, and that was very sad as well. So we have these 7 kids who ultimately become 6 kids. All those 6 kids of Juan make it into the late 20th, early 21st century. But sometime in this 2-decade epic, Juan buys 4 lots way out in the suburbs, down on 22nd Avenue and 15th Street. And he builds a great big 4-bedroom, 1-bath house for his huge family, the 6 of his own kids and the 2 of Enriqueta's kids, and anybody else that decides to move in. In addition to the larger house, he has a side lot that he's going to save for his retirement because he wants to put a little bakery subsidiary outlet on that empty lot, and he builds 2 rental houses for a little extra income. That empty lot is still empty. There's a pecan tree that creates tons of pecans on it. But throughout this 20-year period, he owned various bakers. What we know about him, all his kids said he was a workaholic. He loved to farm. He had a cow on that lot, a couple of chickens. He raised goldfish. He planted all kinds of plants. Anytime somebody went to Spain, they brought him seeds to plant. And he had 2 horses, Charlie and El Moro. Charlie and El Moro lived a few blocks from here. They'd get scared when the trains came by. But Charlie and El Moro used to carry the bread around. Juan would fill up the ox cart. Charlie or El Moro would bring the bread around, and these long loaves of Cuban bread were hung up on nails on the side of people's houses. My grandmother, when I asked her her memories of Juan, and Tony and Raymond, Cuco, had the same memories of Juan, which is he worked, and he worked. He worked all day, all night. The kids had to be quiet during the day. One of my grandmother's fondest memories was that one day Juan found a skate in the city dump. And the kids used to play on the skate. Tony and Cuco and Nani used to ride around the block on the skate. That was their entertainment. She also told me that Juan used to take the kids on long walks. I suppose that was when Enriqueta wanted to get them out of the house and have a little peace and quiet. One of the walks, they walked all the way to the dam on 40th Street, and one of the memorable walks was when they walked to downtown Tampa, took a trolley to Ballast Point. From Ballast Point, they took a boat to Paso Grill, and they spent the weekend, all the kids together in Paso Grill. The 1920s was a more booming area for the bakery, where business really grew, where Juan Moré bought some property somewhere in Ybor City, flipped it. He was a real estate investor there, made some money, and in 1925, when he was about 2 years older than I am today, he did exactly what I would like to do if I had the opportunity. He got this little bit of money together, and he took a road trip. I call it his midlife crisis trip. And what he did was he hopped on a boat. I don't know if it was the mascot or not. He took the boat to Havana, spent some time in Havana, got his passport stamped there. That's how we know about all this. And then he took a voyage across back to Catalunya. He hadn't seen his brother and his kids for over 35 years. So he goes back to see his family over there. And that was a really meaningful trip in our family that Juan Moré did this, because while he was in Catalunya, he reunited with his family. He met up with his 4 nieces, whom he had never met, and took them on a road trip. By the way, this whole trip took him 6 months. Kind of nice. So he takes these 4 girls on a road trip to Paris. These girls had never left their village, and they had the time of their lives. And they remember Juan Moré walking around Catalunya with his white suit and his Panama hat. What's notable about this trip is these 4 girls, we meet up with them. My grandmother and Cuco and Tony go up to visit them in the late 50s and the 1960s. My parents, Jack and Sylvia, take me and my brothers to meet them in the mid-60s and the mid-70s, and they loved us. Why? Because we were Juan Moré's kids and grandkids and great-grandkids. and they rolled out the red carpet for us. And to this day, I'm very close with my cousins in Catalonia who are not Spaniards, who don't like the Spaniards, but who do remember Juan Moré, a great Catalan. The 1930s, we know it as the Depression. Juan Moré would call it a tragedy. The 1930s were a tough era for Juan and for the bakery. Not only did we go through the Depression, but Juan Moré was giving out free bread to starving people, and there were a lot of starving people. Juan lost 2 fingers in a machine in a bakery, and it was tragic for him. He came down with high blood pressure, and a doctor convinced him that he had to extract all of his teeth, even though there was nothing wrong with his teeth. He had a stroke in the 1930s. While he was sick in El Centro Asturiano, he fell out of bed, had a second stroke. He became very despondent. His daughters and his wife, Enriqueta, ran the family and ran the bakery through this really, really tough time. As my grandmother said, the only thing that kept the bakery alive during the 1930s was the Ángel Guardia, the guardian angel that she said and always said floated over that bakery and kept it operating and kept it going and kept it in order. But actually, it was the hard work of the people involved. On September 18th, 1939, Juan Moré, or Papa as he was known, died peacefully at the Centro Asturiano Cemetery. For the next 10 years, well, actually for the next several decades, Raymond, his son, whom we call Cuco, and Tony, his other son, Copeland's grandfather, took the reins and took the bakery to a different era. And it wasn't just Tony and Cuco that did this, it was their wives, Ida and Dalia, that were behind those 2 men, getting up at 3, 4, and 5 in the morning to get their husbands to work, to take care of the kids, to make the bakery operate. During the 1940s, Enriqueta, or Mamita, as she was known by her kids and grandchildren, was the perfect, nurturing Catalan grandmother. She had certain rituals every day, one of which was in the evenings she put nets over the 4-poster beds because there was no air conditioning. There was just an attic fan in that house on 15th Street, and the nets kept the Florida bugs out. She pretty much lived in her kitchen and her front porch. She took a nap every afternoon from 1 to 3, and then she made café con leche for her kids, her grandkids, and any of the neighbors that came by to visit Enriqueta. On December 10th, 1950, 2 months after Brenda was born, Enriqueta passed away and was buried next to her husband. And I understand after this event, Helen has updated the grave marker where the 2 were buried, and we're going to plant this flag to remember them and to remember the colors of the flag, which were Juan and Enriqueta's national colors of Catalunya. The 1940s, 50s, and 60s brought a new era. The bakery became more of a retail establishment where Cuco and Tony took the reins. They continued in Juan Moré's strong work ethic. And what I remember about Cuco and Tony is they were always proud to show off their bakery. One day, Tony was giving me a tour and told me something that it didn't resonate at the time, but he said, you know, nobody makes anything anymore by hand. And he was right. This is one of the last handmade products that's made anywhere. Cuco and Tony continued with this tradition. I could always count on either one of them when there was a school fundraiser or a magazine drive, or we had to sell ads in a periodical, because Cuco and Tony would always support the community. Cuco was known for his coca. He made a flat bread with sugar and lemon rind called coca, and everybody loved his coca. This is a Catalan dish that Cuco would serve on the Feast of San Juan in late June every year at a party. In fact, one day I was working on a project in 5th grade. I was doing a project on the Middle East, and I had to make a map of the Middle East. Cuco decided we were going to make a map out of Cuban bread. And it was going to be a big coca, and I was going to take it to school, and afterwards the kids would all eat the coca. And naturally, when Cuco made the coca, Spain was the biggest country in the Middle East, and Catalan was very pronounced. every afternoon, Cuco or Tony would get in their car, probably a Ford or a Buick, drive up 15th Street, pick up all the women, Dalia and Aida and Nani and Chita and Marina and Lita and Chita and everybody, and they would go to Morrison's. If I was lucky, I got to go too. And if I was really lucky, Richard, we'd go to the Goody Goody. At those lunches, there were always stories told about the bakery. One of my favorite stories, though, was when Cousin Helen decided to surprise her husband, Bobby, with a birthday cake. So she called in the order and explained in great detail what she wanted on that birthday cake. It was to have a picture of a track and keep on the track, Bobby, happy birthday. And she told the baker, you make this right and you have it ready at 3 o'clock because my father will be there at 3 o'clock. So Cuco picked up the cake, delivered it out to Helen's house. They opened up the cake and it said, happy birthday, Bobby. There was a picture of the track with some running shoes and some runners. It said, happy birthday, Cuco will pick up at 3 p.m. That is a true story. Cuco and Tony stayed in the bakery as long as they possibly could. They couldn't get away from the bakery because the bakery was in their veins. But their sons, Raymond and Tony, I call them Tonito and Baby Ray. And by the way, Baby Ray's name is very interesting. Most people don't know that that came from Juan Moré. Baby Ray was born when Juan Moré, Baby Ray was about 4 years old when Juan Moré died. And Juan was studying English, and he had a little English reading book. And in the English book, there was a character named Baby Ray. So when he found out that his grandson was named Raymond, he nicknamed him Baby Ray. And Baby Ray, I'm really sorry, but you know I still call you that because that's what my mom always called you that. So at any rate, the bakery went on, and Baby Ray and Tonito brought the bakery to a new level, expanded the retail operation, but most importantly, they kept the traditions all alive. They kept the palm fronds. They kept the size of the loaf. They kept the original recipe. And they were the third generation, and about 5 or 6 years ago, the fourth generation took over, and that's Copeland. And I'm really thrilled to see my second cousin, Copeland, the fourth generation, carry the torch, hopefully to the fifth generation that's sitting on his lap. There is a myth out there that that the Cuban bread from La Segunda Central is the best bread in the world. And that's actually not true. The Cuban bread is the second best bread in the world. The best bread in the world is actually the hamburger buns that we used to call semitas. And when I was a kid growing up outside of Tampa, our next-door neighbor used to refer to me as that kid that walks around eating hamburger buns. And my dream of the ultimate greatest thing, and Richard Gonsmart could be the biggest hero in the world if he makes a goody-goody hamburger in a semita. That is nirvana. And without further ado, Richard will explain you the date and the location that will happen.
Nothing like having some pressure put on you. I'm not familiar with that hamburger bun, but I will tell you the best bread in the world is the Cuban bread, La Segunda Central. Thanks for sharing the history, Rudy. It was really amazing to hear how far back it goes and the Moré and Moré family that have been part of our community. But it's my pleasure to introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, the mayor of our great city of Tampa, Mayor Bob Buckhorn.
Buenos dias. Rudy, you scared me. If you kept going, we would have been celebrating the 200th anniversary. You might be here, but I'm not going to be here. First of all, to all of you, thank you. This is These are the kinds of days that remind me of what a special place Tampa is. You know, you think about this community and how we were settled, and the Spanish, Cuban, and Italian immigrants who came to this country with nothing on their backs but the hopes and the aspirations of men and women who wanted to do better and to do for their families better than that they had. And they started with nothing, and they came from nothing, and they didn't speak the language, and they came to a country that they didn't know anything about. And they came and they did what they have done as immigrants for generations, and that is to build a better life for their family and to build a better life for that next generation, and to recognize that each of us have an obligation to do something more to leave this community in better shape than it was given to them, whether it was the community of West Tampa, the community of Ybor City, or the larger city of Tampa, that they had a simple moral obligation to leave their kids something better. And this family is an example of that. This family built a business generation by generation, just like the Gonsmarts, trained their kids to give back, recognized that it wasn't always about making money, that it was about building for that next generation and planting those seeds for young people to come and follow them. This is a Tampa success story, but this is more about who we are as a community and the shoulders upon which we stand and the generations of immigrants who came here, who gave us this amazing place. So while we're celebrating an anniversary today, we are celebrating a uniquely Tampa story. It's a story that will now live in the annals of this community's history. It is a story that will continue with the next generation and the next generation after that, telling the stories that you just heard from Rudy Fernandez, the stories of West Tampa and the stories of Ybor City, and what an amazing place this was. Well, I'm here to tell you that the reason this community is about to turn its next chapter in ways that we haven't even imagined is because we stand on the shoulders of families like this, and we owe this family and generations of families here in this community a great debt of obligation, because we are poised on the verge of something special, but it's because of you. So I'm going to do something that mayors get to do. It is one of the fun things about my job. The other great thing about my job is that when my daughter starts dating, the Tampa Police Department is going with her. And I'm not kidding. So any of you with sons and daughters, forget about it. All right. She hates when I do that because she's like 14 and she hates everything I do, so. All right, so I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm going to read the important part. Whereas the location of La Segunda Central Bakery has changed several times over its 100-year history, from its beginnings on 8th Avenue to its current home on 15th Street, and the iconic bakery has been delivering its specialized Cuban bread to businesses, schools, restaurants, and my waste, as well as the shipments around the country. And it has served delicious Cuban sandwiches, Cuban coffee, deli sandwiches, and savory pastries to local citizens and visitors for a century. Whereas La Segunda Central Bakery is hosting a 100th anniversary celebration on Thursday, April 23rd, 2015. And its descendants, the dedicated staff and guests, will honor its heritage and reminisce on all that has been accomplished over the past century. And the Tampa Bay area will have the opportunity to commend the outstanding service they have provided patrons and businesses who depend on their fresh products. Now, therefore, I, Bob Buckhorn, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Tampa, Florida, do hereby proclaim Thursday, April 23rd, 2015, is La Segunda Central Bakery Day in the city of Tampa, Florida, and urge all of its citizens to join me in congratulating them on this 100th anniversary. This is for you. Copeland, come on up. Come on up, Tony. Don't do that. Not on your big day. That's for you. Great job, guys.
If that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. Thank you, Mayor. Fantastic. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce to you County Commissioner now Sandy Merman from the Hillsborough County and Kevin Beckner to present to the Moré family.
Well, good morning. And we had the pleasure of doing the commendation to the Moré family a week ago, actually, at our Board of County Commission meeting. And so I wanted to have the opportunity to present this to their family and friends today so that everybody could hear it and see it once more. But I just want to say a few words. I've known this family as friends, Judy and Tony and Copeland and Stephanie. I've known about the bakery, but this family is so rich and so special to our community. And the bakery just puts the icing on the cake, I guess you could say, because this is just truly a very special family-owned business that exists in our community. And you don't see that very often anymore. And I know personally I came from a very large family-owned business in Indianapolis. It's still there. So I realized the real specialness of what you, if that's a word, of what what you've accomplished over 100 years. I was looking at Rudy and saying I thought that was an 800-year history. But this is truly a special day, and I just congratulate the whole family. Commissioner Beckner and I had the honor of presenting this commendation to them. It says, Commendation, La Segunda Central Bakery. The Board of County Commissioners of Hillsborough County congratulates La Segunda Central Bakery on its 100th anniversary as a cornerstone of Ybor City's rich heritage and diverse flavors. The Board of County Commissioners of Hillsborough County, Florida, does hereby commend La Segunda Central Bakery for a century of commitment to the cherished traditions and rich flavors to make Hillsborough County a great place to live, work, and play. And truly, it's an honor to represent this back to the family. And Tony and Copeland want to come back up. Commissioner Beckner.
I think the real success that is owed to the success of La Segunda, as well as to the Gansmarts and the restaurants and their ventures, have been the bond of families. Think about what else other than a family that can live through a depression, that can get through the hard times and the good times. So it is that social bond, it is that fabric of the family that keeps it together, and I think it is a tribute when you've got the Morés family and the Gansmart family here still in business after over 100 years, 4 generations. It is because of that bond and that love of family, passing down those traditions and passing down that ethic from generation to generation. We do a lot of these celebrations and ribbon cuttings, but I can count on 2 fingers the ones I've attended that's been over 100 years. And again, it's because of what you all have built as a family. It's about what you have all given as a community, and we are so grateful and thankful to have you part of Tampa and to have you part of Hillsborough County. So thank you for what you all do. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's my honor to introduce you to a friend of everyone that lives in Tampa, somebody that's been dedicated serving our city for so many years. And he hasn't really changed, but it's my honor and pleasure to introduce to you City Councilman Mr. Charlie Miranda.
Thank you very much, Richard and Mayor Buckhorn. In Ybor City, we let things out. What do you think we are, stupid? Let me say it's an honor to be here. You know, I went to my first school. In fact, Rudy spoke for so long, when they told me to come up, I thought I was a statue. I couldn't move. But he did a great job. And For many years, I attended Orange Grove. And guess who ran the lunchroom? The two sisters that Rudy talked about. And they were very kind, very generous, and it was part of a family. It's not about selling something or bringing something. In fact, you could order the bread and deliver it to you at the house. So did the milkman. Those things are gone. Quiere una barra pan o mitad barra pan, and they give you either full loaf or half a loaf. We sat in the corner sometime and discussed why Columbus Drive was called La Michica, because they couldn't pronounce Columbus Drive, a lot of us. We looked at the Chevrolet and the Ford. To us, it was not a Chevrolet and a Ford. It was a Fotingo y Chivo Loco, because it was hard to pronounce. That's how it was. And I still come here on Saturdays when I can get in, because the line's kind of long, and take pastry to the rednecks that I work with at the racetrack. Hey, I say it like it is. They call me, in fact, for 20 years, I thought my name was El Hijo del Cubano, the son of the Cuban. Then I worked at the Columbia, they called me Boy. For the next 10 years, I thought my name was Boy. So then finally I am El Hijo del Cubano Boy. And Rudy, now I found out how my name came about, Charlie. They had a horse named Charlie. So hell, here I am, Charlie El Hijo del Cubano Boy. But it's a wonderful day to be here, and Moré and Tony and Kent, please come up. I got something that no one has, not even the mayor of Buckhorn has. And I'm going to give you this in honor of 100 years. And it's a wonderful thing because, see, the historic City Hall is also 100 years this July. So I'm going to give them a special photograph of something that's never been given away to anyone in the bakery business. My pleasure to give you today this photo that will be presented and open in July 2015 of 100 years of historic City Hall. In exchange, I always bargain. I need one loaf of Cuban bread, so I'm going to varnish it and put it on my door. So it'll always be there.
All right, Charlie.
So I can, when July comes, I'll have that Cuban bread that come with historic City Hall, and I'm going to present it to somebody.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for what you do, all of you. God bless you.
Charlie,
Where else can you enjoy this kind of a day with characters like Charlie Miranda and Mayor Bob Buckhorn? Chloe Coney brought a wonderful letter from Congresswoman, but since we're running over time, I'm just going to say that she says on behalf of the constituents of 14th Congressional District, I congratulate you and your family on today's anniversary and on La Segunda Central Bakery's continued success. Sincerely, Kathy Castor. Sure. Thank you, Chloe. I know we're running over time, and I won't start back about the history, but, I think about how many families could say that they've been working together with two businesses for 100 years. I will tell you, it's not on the charts because Babson College has been doing a case study in our family business, and it's less than 2% of the families that will exist over 100 years into 4 generations, much less 5. And here we are talking about it again. And it takes families that are committed to a community, and families that are committed to those employees and to their partners in business. And you look over the 100 years, the challenges that I know our family faced and the Moré family helped us, support us, and challenges they may have faced. You have to be there together. This is a time when loyalty really matters, when a family makes a commitment to a community, to those that work for them, that we're proud of. It's easy just to sell out. It's easy to give up. But it takes heart and it takes courage. It takes a commitment. This family has done that. They haven't taken the shortcuts. They do things by hand. And people say, why don't we grow outside of Florida? I said, because we can't get the Cuban bread fresh. When we opened our restaurant in St. Augustine, we took a baker from here to bake the bread, but there's something about the water of Ybor City. And we just couldn't do it. But the Moré family have adapted and assisted us to make sure we serve the best Cuban bread. And Miami can claim to have the best Cuban sandwich, or they're the originators. I tell them to ask their 100-year-old bakery and 100-year-old plus restaurant to show us their recipe. I don't think it exists. It starts with great ingredients. It starts with great people. As I like to say, that none of us are strong as all of us. And we as a community are really making a difference under the leadership of our mayor, county commissioners, and city councilmen and leaders. On behalf of all the families that depend on their leadership, I thank you. Copeland, I have a thought. I like going back into the future. And I say that on the 115th anniversary, I think Millyanne will be 18 years old. I have a grandson that will be 20. Maybe we could have a merger of the generations. Who knows? But it's my honor and pleasure to introduce to you Juan Moré.
This is overwhelming. This is really great to see everybody here. I really just want to say thank you. Seen a lot of faces that have been involved over the years, whether through friendship, our employees, our family, and just a lot of that. It means a lot to me to see everyone here and support us on a special day for us. I'd like to see if the family could stand up now, actually, and be recognized. As you can see, we have a large family. And Rudy touched on it. A lot of people ask how we've survived for 100 years, and the answer is our family. A lot of times, there's been hard times, and people come and they help. We have, my nephews come and pack cookies for Christmas, or my in-laws come and pack bread. People show up and they just chip in, and that's how the bakery's always been, and I think that's how it always will be. I also want to say thank you to our employees, and I know if Sheila could stand up, I'd appreciate it. I don't know if anyone else is in the back here. If you've been to the bakery before, you know Sheila. She's been here 42 years. I think that says a lot to the dedication that our employees have, and we do feel that they're a part of our family. So that it extends past just beyond our immediate family to the employees that have supported us for so long. Thank you, Sheila. I also want to say thank you to our customers, retail customers that have been here, coming by on Sundays, Saturdays, during the week. I got to meet a lot of you before this event. And it's special to hear about your trips here with your grandparents and your families, and coming by to visit us at the bakery and to try the different products. That means a lot to us, and it's woven into our family history, your experiences here. Thank you very much. And our wholesale customers. I don't want to forget any of our wholesale customers, especially the Columbia restaurant and the other many restaurants here locally that use our bread, and we do our best to support them and help them and get the best sandwich they could possibly get, and it's great to have that as well. This morning, people came up and asked. They said, "Well, what's the plan? What's next? What's going on how are you going to go another 100 years? Are you going to open this? You're going to do that? Are you going to move here?" And I didn't really have the answer, but I was sitting there with my dad. And I asked him again, I said, "Do you want to speak?" And he said, "No, of course." But I asked my dad, and he goes, we were just talking, and he said, "I talked to a customer this morning, and the customer came by and thanked him and said, 'Just do exactly what you guys do. Don't change a thing.'" And my dad was telling me the story, and I'm thinking to myself, and I said, "That's it. That's our plan. Keep everything exactly the same." So thanks again for coming out. Hope to be here for another 100 years. And I'm just really overwhelmed and want to say thank you, everyone, who showed up today. I also need to mention, if you're going to visit the grave, I know a lot of the family is going to visit the grave, to meet on the northeast corner of the bakery afterwards. And we're also offering tours, if you haven't been, to see the back and how we make the bread. They're baking the bread right now. And so on the northwest corner, if you could meet David back there, if you'd like to go and see the back of the bread. This is David over here with his arm up. Thanks again, everybody. Hope you have a great day.
Oh.